This morning, I was sitting at church and a lovely woman sat down beside me. So when the service ended, I turned to her and said, "Hey, a few of us are gonna get brunch after church. You should come." It wasn't planned or rehearsed. It wasn't a big gesture. It was just an invitation. Hold on, I need to Shazam this. I love it. You see, 2 months ago, a few friends and I started a small tradition. Every Sunday, we'd go to church together, and right after, we'd grab brunch. We all have hectic schedules, so church became that 1 hour where we reconnected to something higher, and brunch became the space where we reconnected to each other. It started with 5 of us, just a handful of people who didn't want to rush out after service. We'd sit around a table, laugh, and talk about what the message meant to us, share what was happening in our lives, the highs, the lows, what we're excited about, and how we can support each other. And week after week, more people joined. A friend brought another friend, someone brought a coworker, a roommate, a cousin, and today for the first time, there were 15 of us sitting together. 15 lives that somehow crossed paths because someone extended an invitation. The woman I invited this morning later told me that she had been going to church alone for the past 2 years. She said she'd been praying for community, for friends that she could spend Sundays with. She told me she had been asking God to bring the right people in her life, and today, that prayer was answered. Not through some miracle or a grand gesture, but through something as ordinary as an invitation to brunch. She met 14 new people today. She joined our group chat, she laughed, she opened up, and she said she's excited to come every Sunday. And as I saw her smile at the table, I felt something full circle inside of me. Because I used to be her. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a network, a circle, or a place where I truly belonged. I had big dreams, yes, but dreams don't hold you when you feel alone. I remember sitting in my apartment some nights, scrolling on my phone, watching other people surrounded by friends, dinners, laughter, and feeling that quiet ache in my chest. And I remember whispering a prayer. I said, "God, please help me find community. I don't want to do life alone." Then one day I saw a post about a film event happening in LA. The host's name was Sam Newton. He was a filmmaker I admired when I first started my journey in videography, and something inside me said, "Go." And immediately the fear kicked in. That voice that said, "You won't know anyone, you'll be awkward, you'll stand alone." But then another voice said, "This is a great opportunity, go anyway." So I did. I got dressed, I ordered an Uber, and I head to that film event. And when I arrived, I was stunned. There were so many faces that I recognized from social media. Creators, photographers, filmmakers, people's work that I looked up to for years. It felt surreal to finally be in the same room as them and see them in real life. But it also made me feel small, like I was an outsider looking in. I wanted to connect, but fear built this invisible wall between me and them. So I stayed quiet. I told myself, it's enough that you showed up. You're in the room. Just be grateful for that. And then right when I was about to leave, I decided to go stand in the taco line. That's when a girl next to me turned and said, "Hey, I love your red blazer." Her name was Elena Booth. That simple compliment, that one sentence, turned into an amazing conversation. She then introduced me to her friend Skylar, and we immediately hit it off. A week later, I got coffee with Elena and Skylar, and that coffee turned into a new kind of friendship. The kind where ideas flow easily and conversations turned into collaboration. We started co-working together, sharing projects, and helping each other build what we were dreaming about. And one day, that connection turned into another invitation, a creative trip out to the desert to film a music video with 70 people. 70 artists, filmmakers, creators gathered in the middle of the desert, surrounded by cameras, laughter, joy, and this incredible energy of possibility. That weekend, something shifted. For the first time since moving to LA, I felt like I belonged. I was surrounded by some of the most kind, inspiring, and creative people I had ever met. Later, I found out that most of them actually went to church together. They had this sense of joy, peace, and just warmth that I just couldn't describe. They weren't trying to impress anyone, they weren't performing, they were just real and genuine. And that joy made me curious. I found myself wondering, where does that come from? That curiosity led me to going to my first church in LA. And that decision changed everything about my life. All of it, the community, the belonging, started with one single invitation. One simple moment where someone saw me, spoke up, and opened a door. And sitting in church today, inviting that woman to brunch, I realized I had become the person I once prayed for. I once prayed for community, and now I get to create it for others. I once hoped to be included, and now I get to be the one that includes. And that's the real power of an invitation. We underestimate how much those small gestures matter. We think that change requires something huge, dramatic, and world-shifting. But sometimes the most meaningful change comes from a moment so ordinary, you almost miss it. A conversation, a compliment, a simple, "Hey, come with us." You never know whose loneliness you're about to touch, and you never know whose prayer you might be answering. You see, we live in a world that's increasingly closed off. We spend hours scrolling through people's lives who look full, while we silently feel empty. We convince ourselves that everyone has friends, that no one needs us, that reaching out is awkward. But here's the truth. Everyone is waiting for an invitation. Everyone wants to feel seen, welcomed, and remembered. And sometimes boldness doesn't look like shouting from a stage. Sometimes it's as quiet as just looking at someone and saying, "You should come." That's the kind of boldness that builds community. That's the kind of courage that heals isolation. When I look back, every meaningful chapter in my life started with an invitation I said yes to, or one that I dared to extend. If I had let fear win that night at the film event, none of the friendship, the experiences, the spiritual growth that followed that would have ever happened. And now I try to live my life with that same principle. To notice the people on the edges, the ones sitting alone, the ones who remind me of myself years ago, because I know how much courage it takes to show up somewhere new. And I know how much one open door can change everything. So maybe today, your bold move isn't about starting something new. Maybe it's not about business or a dream or a transformation. Maybe it's simply about extending an invitation. It could be to coffee, to dinner, a walk, or even Sunday brunch. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be genuine. Because what if your simple, "Come join us," becomes someone's breakthrough moment? What if it's the day their story changes direction? We're all just one invitation away from something sacred. A friendship, a calling, a new chapter. And maybe the life you've been praying for is on the other side of a conversation you haven't started yet. So here's my challenge to you today. Think of someone who's been on your heart. Maybe they're distant, they're quiet, or new. Send that text, ask them to join, invite them in. Because sometimes the smallest gesture is the loudest act of love. Today reminded me that boldness isn't just about showing up. It's about bringing others with you. It's about being the person who makes others feel like they belong. When you invite someone in, you're not just filling a seat, you're creating a moment where connection begins and loneliness ends. You're answering a prayer you didn't even know existed. This is day 12 out of 100 bold days. It's a reminder that the world doesn't change if a few people talk louder. It changes because a few people care deeper. It changes because someone looked up from their phone, noticed another human being, and said, "You can sit with us." You never know whose life you'll change when you decide to invite instead of scroll. And maybe that invitation, that simple act of courage, is how you start changing your own. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you so much. Comment day 12 out of 100 if you want to start your streak. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow at 7 a.m.